Hello everyone, my name is Jyoti and I'm part of an organization called Keystone Foundation, and we are based out of a small hill town called Kotagiri in Nilgiris district of Tamil Nadu in India. We are an eco-development initiative started in 1993, and much of our work is based out of the NBR, which is the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, where we work with largely with indigenous communities and also other non-indigenous communities, and using a very socio-ecological lens. Mm, and we work on various programmatic thematic areas of community well-being, biodiversity and conservation, water and sanitation, climate change, people and nature collective, and we're also part of various local and international networks. Now, coming to the topic in focus today, generally speaking, India as a country relies a lot on groundwater, and generally, groundwater scarcity and pollution has been sort of long-standing issues here in the region. And now, I would say, with climate change and the inconsistencies that are being seen in terms of unpredictable rainfall, snow cover, flash floods, etc., water stress and insecurity is becoming sort of an area of concern here. Now, there has been cases where certain states have been very proactive in addressing their water stress issues, like Rajasthan, for example, who has some really very interesting community-based water conservation models and all that. On the other hand, where I live, the state that I live in right now, which is Tamil Nadu, also has been very sort of proactive in ways of in terms of sort of addressing some of these issues. For example, Tamil Nadu is the only state in India which has a rule that says that all houses must have a rainwater harvesting facility to get a building permit approval. So I see these as very initial efforts taken at the state level to address some of these concerns, which has been around for a longer time, and now perhaps these issues are becoming more and more, serious and more and more complicated, perhaps. Now, the place that I currently live in and work is in the Nilgiris, which is also referred to as the Blue Mountains in Tamil Nadu, which is part of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, which itself is sort of a complex landscape cutting across three states of India, which is Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka, and has a single and is a sort of a single block of very distinct biodiversity with a lot of endemism. It is part of the Western Ghats, has very complex land use dependencies, very diverse kind of communities residing in the landscape, indigenous and non-indigenous, and therefore very deep-rooted and diverse socio-cultural linkages, and also multi-stakeholder governance mechanisms, all of which can be seen here in the NBR. The NBR as a region, particularly the Nilgiris part of the NBR, has an abundance of lakes and streams and springs and wetlands and whole sort of the watershed catchment of many of the main tributaries that supply water both to Nilgiris as well as to the neighboring um, towns and cities and the plains. Um, Now, this region, what is unique is also that it is undergoing rapid land use changes with increased built environment in the upper hills, resulting in loss of wetlands and recharge areas, increased, chemical intensive agriculture that is happening in the upper hills. These are areas also known for its tea plantations, which also happen to be very chemically intensive. Because of all these practices, it is what we see is increased water and effluent runoff in these regions, contaminating the soil and water, including the supply of water downstream. Now, along with these sort of concerns over water access and quality, an additional challenge has been the sanitation concerns in the upper hills, which are also on the rise and which obviously will have implications on the quality of water um, and access to water both upstream as well as downstream. In 2018, for example, when we did a baseline assessment on to understand the hill sanitation, situation in the Nilgiris, what it showed us was that there is extremely poor, sanitation infrastructure and services, including fecal sludge management, solid waste management, and all that combined with the socio-cultural practices around sanitation um, uh, were so sort of complex that it made these communities extremely vulnerable to waterborne diseases, low immunity, and general health, and a lot of general health concerns. um, Another unique and sort of important aspect about this region is the unique hydrogeology of the region and the linkages between water flow, sanitation infrastructure, and the implications of all this on water quality. Now, considering these are hill areas that are prone to landslides, and the fact that these are areas that are hydrogeologically, fragile, it sort of and the fact that there's significant interactions between these hydrogeological factors on the water flow, on the water quantity, on the water quality, and that layered with the influence of land use changes makes it, sort of a very complex, interlinked systems, in this landscape. And when such sort of complex systems are compromised, then the interventions also become kind of challenging, because we cannot sort of approach just from one particular angle, because we know whatever we do in one component will have implications on the other aspects as well. And so, considering all this contextual issues and challenges and current conditions, our work on water has always been very, I would say, community centric, involving local communities in all stages of interventions, right from, let's say, identifying their local water sources, whether it is springs or wetlands or groundwater sources or surface water sources like streams and rivers, identifying them, mapping them, assessing their quantity, their discharge rate, quality, based on various parameters, understanding access to these resources using a gendered lens, which also makes a big difference from a health perspective as well. Understanding each community's cultural linkages and practices around water and sanitation, understanding human wildlife interaction, which is also sort of an important element, particularly here in the Nilgiris or in the NBR, because we are sitting in a place surrounded by forests, and with rich wildlife and all of that. And water then becomes sort of this common source for both humans and wildlife, and therefore developing water security plans and conservation plans that are both that would benefit both communities, human communities, as well as the wildlife. And so what we have done is we have adopted multiple approaches, sort of to address some of these concerns, um, keeping in mind the complex environment um, that I just sort of described. So one is, but let's say, the human dimension or the community-based approach, where we work on enhancing knowledge and awareness on water quality, water management, highlighting its close connections to sanitation and health. Then there is the ecological approach, where we address this through wetland restoration, riverbank rejuvenation, spring rejuvenation, improvement of water, existing water sources, and so on. Third, there is the advocacy and governance approach, where we highlight some of these concerns to government entities and um, try to sort of strengthen community and community-based water and waste management through um, through identifying community members, training them, building their capacities to kind of take the lead in managing this at the community, at the very local level, and and these trained, um, I would say, frontline trained people are also referred to as water stewards and climate educators and community health workers and so on. And last but not the least, technical collaborations working with academic institutions and technology centers, such as nationally we work very closely with the Indian Institute of Technology and the Global Sanitation Center for Excellence, where we are piloting alternative sanitation technologies that are supposedly much more efficient and effective for a terrain like the Nilgiris, where it allows for on-site fecal sludge management using biodigesters, which then finally if it sort of eats up all the solids, and then the whatever is the output water is apparently almost free of pathogen, and um, you know and which what that means is that it would the water that gets released out is not contaminating any of the existing water sources. So these are some of the experiments that we are pilots that we are trying out in the region, with the hope of sort of learning from them, developing them, fine-tuning these technology to make it even more functional and appropriate for the landscape, so that then it becomes, can be more replicated or scaled up. Now, what we have seen is that some of these interventions are showing positive results, which for me is to be seen as opportunities for, again, scaling up and replicating. So, for example, we see improvement in water quantity and quality, particularly in areas where we have worked on ecological restorations and rejuvenation, because these are much more quicker and in some ways um, short term, or yeah, I mean quicker, or much more I guess um, less complicated in many ways. The challenge has been primarily on addressing constraints around behavior change in terms of sanitation practices, waste management, and agriculture practices, all of which has implications on water availability and water quality. Um, you know, so we don't know. We are trying some of these experiments, as I mentioned earlier, with sanitation and also facilitating community um, uh, agriculture community or farming community to move towards more organic practices around agriculture, so that all of this then reduces the impact on water quality. Now, so besides these, I would say, the other challenge perhaps has been um, thinking of water scarcity and access issue from a climate change lens. Now, these are areas that are prone to climate uncertainties, and compared to climate risk, climate uncertainties, or as we like to call it, climate incertitudes, which is basically a combination of risk and uncertainty and ambiguity and ignorance. All of this, when contrasted to this, very more sort of reductive framing of climate as climate risk, where risk is seen to be, how do I say, has a sense of, it's kind of assumed to have known probabilities, and therefore we have sort of quick fixes, more technocratic solutions to address risks. Oftentimes, what happens is that these solutions then fail to actually address the climate change challenges experienced by communities, particularly those communities living in hilly and mountainous landscapes, where uncertainties seem to be um, uh, really kind of um, um, challenging, um, and requires sort of a different kind of resilience and adaptation capacities. And this is something that we are also trying to explore as part of our ongoing collaborative research. Just to give you a quick example of some of these uncertainties that I was referring to, one thing that we have been seeing in these landscapes, particularly in the NBR, has been, these unexpected events of, extreme rain and weather and flash floods and unexpected landslides and all that. So, which does not really fall into that pattern that gives us a sense of potential risk, and therefore allows the communities to be, more prepared. In this context, it is more about these unexpected events and therefore the uncertainties about the possibility of an event happening, which then makes the communities become more adept at a different form of, adaptation and resilience building. So this is something that we are trying to sort of explore and understand in this region. And obviously, these events would has a direct linkage to, water and other resource availability as well, not just water. So, in summary, from my experience of seeing the challenges and complexities that we are faced with, I feel going forward, perhaps more emphasis must be given to developing more local and contextually suitable community-based water, sanitation, health management systems that are also, ecologically and hydrogeologically appropriate. There are a lot of national level programs and state level programs focusing on improving aspects of sanitation or access to water, water management, and so on. And these are all wonderful and required and needed. But if only these programs also allowed for tailoring the implementation in ways that are more contextually appropriate, that factors in the status of water accessibility in the region, the nature of the terrain, the hydrogeology of the region, the cultural factors that influence a lot of the decisions, the governance systems that are in place, then I feel these programs will have a sort of a much higher chances of success. Yeah, so that's it from my end. Thank you. Just want to thank everyone for this opportunity, and hope some of these insights from this part of the world has been useful and interesting to listen to. Thank you and bye.